Good afternoon, everyone. You're very welcome along to our December offering of our Aware webinar series, which takes place on the second Wednesday of every month at 12 midday. So to welcome you along and just to give you a little minute to get yourself settled wherever you're logging on from or joining us from around the country and perhaps even internationally. So you're very welcome this afternoon. And I'm delighted to welcome for this month's December, our last webinar of 2022, which is titled Managing Our Mental Health While Being a Long Way from Home. I'm delighted to welcome onto today's panel, Emilia Marchelewska. Did I pronounce that pretty okay?
You did very well, Emilia Marchelewska. Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you. Yeah, a health advocacy officer at Cairde, which is a community development organization working with people with ethnic migrant communities. And we're delighted to welcome Emilia along, and also our own Katarina Chudnenko, who is a Ukrainian psychotherapist residing in Ireland. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation between the three of us in the next hour to discuss what it is like and what thoughts Emilia and Katarina have in relation to managing mental health while being a long way from home. My name is Stephen McBride. I'm the Director of Services at Aware and a chartered counselling psychologist and a group analytic psychotherapist. So I'll be channeling some of those listening skills, I dare say, to generate a conversation between the three of us in the next hour or so. So I suppose you're both very welcome, and I'd like to just to hear some of your introductory thoughts about the topic of the webinar today at Aware, where I suppose our duty really, or our mission, is to provide support, information and education to people who experience depression, bipolar disorder and other mood-related conditions. And this is one of our offerings that may be very much supportive to people who are listening in. It could be educative and also, informative, that it might give people further information about how to manage their mood and manage their mental health at this time of year, which can often be a time of joy, but very much also a time of difficulty for people. And I suppose I'm thinking specifically of all people who are refugees in Ireland now, with the mention, of course, in that to people from the Ukrainian displaced community residing in Ireland. So if I was to get your thoughts initially, Emilia, first of all, about, what your thoughts are about how to manage our mental health in a helpful way, perhaps, or to look after ourselves in a kind way at this time of year when you're so far from home, perhaps.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, Christmas can be a time of mixed feelings. Wherever you can travel back to your home country to see your family and friends, or if you have to stay. I've been working in Cairde for over 10 years, and before Christmas, it tends to get either more quiet, or we get clients who are not sure what they're going to do with themselves over the Christmas period. Or maybe, it's a different times of year where people cannot travel. It doesn't have to be Christmas, it's either, family occasions or even holidays. And people can't travel for various reasons, for immigration reasons. It's not safe to go. Maybe they don't have money, they don't have time off, and maybe they don't have the links with the family or the home countries that are a reason enough to travel. We in our work is we are health and information, we are an organization that provides health, information and advocacy service, but part of our work is really sometimes about providing that emotional support and just being with people. And that time can bring, of course, some sadness and maybe feelings of guilt, feelings of loneliness and isolation. Definitely people question themselves, why did I even leave? Maybe family is there, I can't travel. There's that sense of kind of, I don't know, just itchiness and restlessness in people, trying to cope, find ways to cope. Yes, maybe we can talk about this,
That's helpful, Emilia. Thank you. And what is it do you think about this time of year that's particularly triggering for people around their mental health, or that activates something for people, you know, that you work with in your organization, Cairde?
Yeah, so as I said, you know, it's a time where we talk about connectedness, you know, togetherness. And if you can't have it, you know, if you are far away from also this pressure, you know, to feel joyful and to be with other people, if you don't have this other people that you love or that you feel close to, it can be just difficult. So if people didn't really make peace with this, maybe it's their first Christmas in Ireland, it can be difficult. I think with time, people find strategies how to cope with this.
Talk a bit about that. Thank you, Emilia, for those opening remarks. And if I was to come to you, Katarina, your sense of that, I suppose, in relation to some of the thoughts and observations you have about the topic under discussion this afternoon.
Perfect. Yeah, and can I introduce myself as well?
Of course, please do.
Yeah. Welcome everybody. My name is Katarina. I'm from Ukraine, and originally I'm from Odessa city, which is seaport, and it's Russian-speaking city by its original. But after war started, most of people in our city, as me as well, we had changed our language to Ukrainian, like to improve our identity. So it's very important how to feel like you have two mother tongues in your identity, and one had changed, like, you know, where you wasn't planned of it, like of this under pressure of these circumstances. I am psychologist and I'm psychotherapist. My first approach and my first certificate was in Gestalt approach, where I got specialization in working with traumatic experience. And currently I'm a last year student of CBT course, and hopefully I will get certification next year. And as well in Ukraine, I run a course of working with vulnerable group of adults like ethnic minorities and LGBT clients. So I had this kind of experience, how to feel like a vulnerable part of vulnerable group in Ukraine before war started, when it was LGBT or ethnic migrant or other group, and how does it feel to be a member of this group after war started. So it's like, you know, double identity of being a vulnerable person. So I can share this experience as well. And here in Ireland, I'm working like a support group facilitator with Aware, and like a psychotherapist and Ukrainian psychologist for Ukrainian people who reside in Ukraine and all over the world now. So I can share my experience of how people what people in Ukraine feels like now at the moment, and how does it feel to be immigrants and refugees in other countries. And my point, what I wanted to talk about, is to as I said it, like security and safe rules, what we should mind when we're facing with refugees, Ukrainian refugees in Ireland, and migrants, different groups in Ireland. Because on my opinion, you know, when we are speaking about mental health support, I can give you like this example. When you, for example, you're a surgeon and you are going to make like surgery operation, there is some issues what you should consider in your mind doing this kind of, but if you wouldn't wash your hands, everything will go wrong. Because if you wouldn't wash your hands, you will put bacteria for this client, and this is the first step, which we usually forget when we go into this kind of things. So what I want to speak about, firstly, how to wash your hands before you're facing these people. If you're volunteer or supporter, and even if you're a refugee by yourself, because these kind of rules you should also mind when you're trying to help yourself or your loved ones. So that is my opinion, what I want to talk about.
Very good. So the idea of washing your hands, I suppose, is metaphorical for looking after yourself or taking care of yourself. So it starts from within. So if we go back to
not actually taking care about yourself, but what supporter should mind in their should consider before he or she will try to help anybody from these vulnerable groups.
Yes, yes. And if you'd like to say a little bit more, Katarina, about some of the vulnerability you see in the work that you do here with people from the Ukrainian community and maybe other ethnic minority communities that are they're here as refugees, you know, and what support you offer to them so that they can manage their mental health.
Currently, I'm offered for them to kind of support the free of charge support groups, which thankful for aware support we can provide for Ukrainian people. And this I find really a good resource for them, a place where they can share free their feelings and to receive peer-to-peer support, which is very important. And individual counseling as well, which me and my colleagues can provide.
Yeah, thank you, Katarina. And if I was to go back to you a little bit for just to get a sense, Emilia, of, you know, you mentioned the word kind of strategy. So I was thinking a little bit about, you know, you talked about what might be helpful for people to cope, or different kind of ways that people can go about kind of, if not developing connections, but maintaining connections when it doesn't feel easy maybe, or when it feels as though, you mentioned the word isolation. You know, and obviously as human beings that we're social beings, you know, so and very often, and it links in with depression, and it links in with you know, sadness and low mood. The idea that forging or having these connections can be very difficult, and perhaps more so this time of year. So what do you kind of see or think about in relation to coping?
Yeah, part of our work actually is to deliver workshops to communities called Pathways to Being Well. And, you know, I think the topics that we discuss are relevant for this time as well, because, you know, it is, you know, yeah, for migrants, that idea of the topic of social connections, you know, belonging, you know, friendships, family, country, nationality, it's, you know, it's something that may not be very straightforward. So anyway, yeah, so and sometimes people, you know, the bad is stronger than good. You know, my background is in psychology and, you know, social psychology, lifestyle medicine and positive psychology. So the bad is stronger than good. So what we try to encourage people is to identify what they already have. And that can apply to our social connections, of course, as well. You know, we can focus on those relationships that we already have. And for instance, you know, in Poland, but that applies to other people, what people usually do in these times of the year, they try to celebrate these traditions with the people that are in Ireland. So with their friends that they made in Ireland, maybe their family members that are there already. And we have Christmas Eve is our special night, and we always leave one place for a stranger. So that's that practice of togetherness and kindness and showing kindness and experiencing joy despite of adversity as well. So we encourage people, yeah, to do that, you know, reach out to your friends, reach out to your family members that are here, maybe go to the city, you know, to Dublin City and watch Christmas lights together. Many people love, you know, going and exploring Ireland. So maybe, you know, on a Christmas day, people can go to the mountains together, and that ticks so many boxes. You know, they do physical exercise, they connect with other people, they're in nature, so that's a great way of boosting yeah, their mood. But when you think about that, you know, I think Christmas is actually a great opportunity to reach out and to reach out to new people. And to reconnect with those that maybe we, yeah, to the connections that we haven't fostered too much. If Barbara Fredrickson actually talks about this, creating moments of micro moments of positivity resonance, you know, that can be applied even if you don't have strong relationships in your life. You can have these moments of positivity resonance, even with strangers. You know, when you show the kind of, I don't know, like I think Irish people are great at that. When you show the mutual care, you know, interest, when you share a smile, when you laugh with a person. So it can be like those through little moments we can build our relationships. And I think it's a hopeful way of thinking, you know, that it's on moment by moment basis we create connections.
That's very, very encouraging, Emilia, and very helpful to hear you kind of invite, you know, the audience and for people who will watch this webinar back to think about the different things that can be done, because it's a kind of, there's something to do with encouraging someone's positive attitude, you know, and it's very strengths based, but also not denying the adversity. So it's not saying all is good, you know, and forget the difficulty of being, you know, a refugee or being displaced, or maybe not choosing to be in Ireland this Christmas, and yet trying to find aspects of positivity resonance, or kind of, you know, aspects of something joyful or connected in life. And that's something very helpful, I think. Yeah, so thank you, Emilia. And if I was to, would you like to add something to that, Katarina? You're kind of smiling there. I get a sense that what Emilia has said makes sense, you know. So what would you like to add to that? Or
it definitely makes sense, and I can totally agree with Emilia. Just maybe want to add some specific of Ukrainian community for now, because for now Ukrainian community is very much split on different groups, and there can be certain difficulties in communication, because, for example, experience of people who are, for example, in Ireland now are different considering with the people who are in Ukraine. And if you would ask me what is one of the most top of important themes that arise in our support groups and people who are in Europe, how can I share my positive moments with people who are in Ukraine? How can I put in Instagram image of photo of birthday cake, of Christmas tree, or something like that? How can I show that actually I like actually some moments here if people in Ukraine, they are still in this blackouts experience and that kind of things. So that's moment what we should mind now is how to respect the difference and still unite the community. It's not actually easy point for everybody.
Very difficult, Katarina. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
The idea that how can I, you know, and there's something about maybe regret or, you know, a sense of guilt, maybe, if that's the right word on it, for people who are residing in Ireland and here at this time of year, and then loved ones, family members, friends, people in their community in Ukraine, and the level of risk and danger there as well. So of course, that split, I suppose, is that word, isn't it? And the difficulty kind of creating a connection or something joined up in that. Yeah, something about it being disloyal or something, or inappropriate maybe to be celebrating Christmas when all of what is going on in Ukraine is going on. Okay, yeah. If you'd like to expand a little bit, Katarina, and just say, and actually just before that, just to invite the audience that are with us this afternoon, you know, that we have a questions and answers box. So please put in some thoughts or questions or observations you have, and I can put them to Emilia or Katarina. You know, we'll do our best to answer questions or thoughts or queries that you might have. So please enter some of those questions you have into the Q&A box, and we'll get to as many as we can as the time progresses. Just to expand a little bit, Katarina, on what you've just said, you know, what are the main kind of themes you see? You know, I suppose you've alluded to it already. What are the main themes or issues you see emerging in the work that you're doing and seeing, you know, whether it's to do with the support groups at Aware or in other aspects of your work? Because I suppose I'm conscious that you're residing here too, you know, and you know, you're from the Ukraine and most likely wouldn't be living here if it wasn't for the war, you know. So just to share a little bit about that, if you could, you know, some of the themes that you see and notice.
So I can tell that, of course, themes that arise in every group and when I'm working with the clients, of course, they are concerning war issues and being in other countries issues, but as well, we should not forget that still for every person, the most important questions are relationships, how to build my communication with people who I love, and how to build my new identity here, and
Yeah.
what actually values do I have now for this moment. So,
Mm.
and of course, in this kind of experience that we had faced with, there are some existential parts which everybody's faced. Like there, it was not plan of these people to face with this part, but they have to, and to ask themselves who I am, what do I want to do in life in a global meaning, and what is like my top important values of my life. So mostly people just face with these questions, and they have no choice not to answering them.
That makes a lot of sense, you know, where is my identity and what it's like to feel maybe connected now, you know, 6-7 months on in Ireland, but what's my kind of status? I'm Ukrainian. Where do I live? Where am I going to stay? Things being in flux, and that sense of displacement, I think, is the best word, isn't it? Or being unsettled psychologically, and perhaps even physically, you know, unsettled regarding, you know, having to move, and all of those issues. Yes, indeed.
And this
go on, yes, Emilia.
If I can jump in, you know, sometimes, you know, we work also with people who are seeking international protection, or, you know, refugees, and that topic of, you know, uncertainty that, you know, doesn't only apply to can I go back to my home country or not, but that's uncertainty in relation to getting your papers, or certainty of your accommodation. Worry about people who are left behind, you know, that sense of grief and loss. And but then there's that moment of, I think, transformation, you know. And when this happens, when I start looking forward to the future, and I think this is an important for us to foster and to make peace with the past, with the adversity, and grow, you know, from it and on it. When we look at migration and mental health, you know, I think especially in this time, it's important to look. You know, we usually talk about migration can be a risk factor, generally speaking, for developing mental health conditions. And we usually look at the stressors that happened before the migration, during, and after. And what's interesting is the mediating role that conditions in the host country play in protecting migrants' mental health. So when we look at you know, it's so difficult now with the accommodation, but also, you know, what kind of immigration policies we create, what kind of narrative we build to make sure that everyone who lives in Ireland feels at peace, safe, and at home, that feels that they can give as well. Because when we talk really about connections and that togetherness, is that sense, you know, we're all really, you know, one human family, and the essence of human connectedness is to feel that we matter, that we give value, and we take something what's of value. I think maybe Christmas time, it's a good time to think about that we think about that, you know, the value as a human beings that we want to share with the world.
Right.
On a philosophical a little bit note.
Yes, no, but very helpful, I suppose, you know. I can sense the passion and the belief you have in that message, and I can imagine you, Emilia, speaking very clearly and powerfully with your own audience and audiences within Cairde that you work with in developing and being inclusive in that message to people who are seeking international protection or who are refugees to Ireland. And it's a very live issue, you know, and you've touched on it in relation to the accommodation, and it's a very it's a clear and present issue, you know, in our society right now, you know. So yeah, it's important to have this conversation, to develop people's awareness around it, and to speak about the issues around at a societal level, you know, because I know that's something that you're passionate about, you know, to do with your work with Cairde, Emilia, you know. Yeah.
And can I just build on, you know, just appreciating the fact that Katarina works with Aware, and that Aware organizes this webinar, that we even talk about this topic, because there's a lot of stigma among, you know, migrant communities. There's that willingness, you know, of holding, you know, being strong as long as I can. Exactly. And especially, you know, for the Ukrainians as well. And the danger that it brings, that people tend to seek for help. Migrant communities, research shows that tend to seek for help at the crisis point. And we know that mental health services, you know, they're not exactly that well equipped to cater for the crisis, you know, with the long waiting lists. So having that culturation, we call it cultural adaptations. So for instance, you know, Katarina running the groups in her language for the Ukrainians, and taking that strength approach that you mentioned, Stephen, is important, you know, that we protect people's mental health before it breaks down.
Exactly. Yeah. Katarina, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, I can totally agree with Emilia for that. Yeah.
What specifically do you agree with, or what's the main point that you kind of connect in with?
That actually, yeah, there can be some expectations for people that we should be strong enough, and it's like actually some difficulties to at first to tell for yourself that I need some mental health support at first from our people, and then to receive this mental health, actually, because there are some difficulties to have it in here. But I want to add about importance of that, importance of the understanding
of reaching out and asking for it, because maybe there's a link in it too for people from migrant communities or refugees, that I can't complain because I'm not in the Ukraine in a war-torn situation. I'm in Ireland. So I have to put up with the idea that my mental health is deteriorating, or that I'm experiencing depression or low mood, because what I'm experiencing is not in, to pardon this Irishism, you know, the halfpenny place. It's not in the same ballpark as it would be in if I was living in Ukraine. So that's an internal voice or internal script that's halting people coming forward or reaching out for help. Because I was thinking and preparing for this webinar, and one of the things that and I'm hearing it in what you're saying, Emilia, too, you know, about, you know, reducing barriers and accessing support, and how to encourage and develop the message that people, you know, for all people and from all ethnic minorities and cultures, you know, to seek, you know, support as they need it, rather than waiting for it to become a crisis, as we were saying. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, recognizing that pathways to access supports are different for the migrant communities for a number of reasons. You know, like imagine if, you know, all of us moved to China tomorrow, and, you know, you think, oh my God, I need to speak to someone, you know, I need to see a doctor, or whatever it is you know, you need. It's difficult to first, you know, who is in your, the first port of call usually for people experiencing mental health issues is, you know, family and friends. And if these are missing, these are spiritual, religious leaders and community leaders and mental health professionals speaking, you know, their own language. And then only people start to learn pathways to seek public mental health supports within, you know, like in Ireland. And, you know, for all of us, perhaps we know what's Aware, we know what's Samaritans, you know, but it's not really that obvious for everyone. It's not really that obvious what happens when I make that phone call. You know, what can I expect? Is it really anonymous? people come from different, sometimes they're very, they lack trust. They lack sometimes mental health literacy to see their symptoms as deterioration of their mental health and well-being.
Yeah, it's a very important point. Go on, Katarina, yes?
And we shouldn't forget also a point of language, because, for example, if they're calling for Samaritans, it will be not helpful if person doesn't know English language. And I just wanted what's happening with our community, that people first they ask to search for support for their children, because for themselves they believe that they're strong enough and nothing bad happens for them. All just appear. They can have like severe symptoms of depression or PTSD, but still they are thinking that they're okay. But they see definitely that their children are not okay, so they start looking for support from their children.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we see that. We see the same pattern. And if I can jump in, Stephen.
Please do, Emilia.
Yeah. So what we pilot now is we've trained a cohort of people from different backgrounds and with different immigration journeys, speaking different languages from different cultures, and they act as peer mental health support, peer mental health and well-being supports and volunteer and, oh my goodness, it's a mouthful, support and advocacy volunteers.
Yes.
And their role is actually to reach out, through speaking their language, adapting the messages, evidence-based, messages, but adapting them to their culture. And people start coming forward, and they start seeking help. And for some people, it's, some people knock onto doors looking for support and they're not getting it. And some people are, on a long haul, maybe they have received they saw a psychotherapist or psychologist through an interpreter. It didn't really, maybe it helped a bit, but they're still waiting. So, organizations like Aware providing support alongside the HSE supports, and that psychoeducation, that human presence at the end of a call or an email is really important. But bearing in mind that some people, as Katarina said, because of language or cultural differences or information barrier, they're not getting that. So trying to be more creative and reach out is important.
Thank you, Emilia. Thank you. If I was to linger a little bit around, there's two words that are resonating in my head, I suppose, and they seem to make sense to me. So I want to see what sense they make to ye. I suppose this idea of managing one's mental health, or if you're a parent, managing your own, but also, if you have children, as has been mentioned as well too, and people that you're responsible for, but that when you're far from home. But the idea of grief and loss keeps going around in my head. So I suppose I just wanted to get your thoughts on those two kind of experiences, those psychological experiences, I suppose the emotional pain of being far from home, inclusive of all nationalities and citizens from whatever country around the world who are in Ireland now, and that the idea of migration and refugee status, and I suppose we're speaking as well specifically to the Ukrainian community, but just the idea of that emotional pain that comes up around grief and loss.
Yeah.
Do you want to?
Can I answer your question, Stephen, considering points that usually help people to pass this way of grief and loss? Actually, I want to speak about resources and importance of this experience, what people need to make this way like experience, but not traumatic experience. So what is important for people, as I can say? First point, as I think, it's a sense of continuity. What do I mean? For example, people had their own identity and their own day-to-day practice of doing something, and it's very important for people to continue this practice and to continue their identity in some way when they were moved to Ireland. It can be some small things, like, for example, people women in Ukraine, they put a lot of efforts for themselves to take care about their beauty issues, like going to manicure, to go into the hairdress. And for example, in these small things, it's very important for people still to go there, like maybe not so often, just to prove themselves that their life still is going on. And
Exactly.
It's very important to respect these kind of things, that it's not like, oh my God, I'm a refugee and you should just survive now and you should forget about your hands and hair and that kind of things. This important to continue what you were doing before. And that's not only like, for example, this kind of things that I tell you. It's can be some as well as professional identity for people who got lose their jobs because of this crisis. Maybe they can start to do some volunteering work in their own field, but to improve that there are still, for example, doctors. I mean, not like doing like a medical health support, but maybe to be a part of the society, for example, medical society, just to have this feeling of continuity of their own identity. So this is one first important point when you're feeling grief, just to feel grief, but the same time to continue these small important things which connect with your previous life. That's the first point.
Very helpful.
And second point, to move your way of thinking from goals to values. That's what I take from acceptance commitment therapy theory. Because before wars started, people in our community was very much, as everywhere, of course, in Europe, orientated for goals to pay mortgage, to get some jobs, to go for university, and these kind of things. And now they're frustrated because they have this feeling of uncertainty, as Emilia said, and they don't know how to plan their life. So goals are feeling like disorientated because there are no certain future anymore. But still people can ask themselves, even if I have this grief and loss, even if my life had changed and we don't know where, what actually I appreciate in my life as a person, as a human being, and what values I have. And these values, they don't relate for a certain time, and people can be connected with them as long as they're alive. So
that's very helpful, Katarina. And I can just sense your passion and the power in your message, and there's such great hope and help in what you're saying for people to digest and take away, around the rituals or the activities of daily life, trying to, and I think it can be overused, the word normal, that idea, but we're bringing in something helpful and hopeful for one, and it can be as simple as, carrying on those kind of, having the manicure, the pedicure, and I don't want to be trite or glib about it, but those aspects of it, that are very helpful for people to continue on with their lives, while also not denying or pretending that everything's okay, that it can be both and, as opposed to either or, maybe. Yes. Thank you, Katarina. And I suppose your sense, Emilia, around grief and loss, or that aspect of it, and how to kind of navigate that space.
Yeah, we usually don't try, don't dig deep, into these feelings, and taking the more maybe positive approach works really well with some of the people that we engage. And as Katarina said, and you said, turning into and boosting our positive emotions and building on them is really important. So not to fall into the trap or, the hole of kind of going and looking into what we've lost, what we miss, but rather, accepting this, which is not easy, but making peace with that, or trying to trying to make peace with that. It's a process, what I'm trying to say. But that what works with our clients, are these concepts of maybe self-compassion and gratitude that Katarina also mentioned. And we encourage people to take a stock of that, first look around and see what can you be grateful for, and build that sense of abundance that maybe you forgot is in your life, and these can be really simple things. And even if there is adversity, we try to encourage people to find the good in the bad as well. And people love this, love this kind of maybe change of thinking, giving the hope. But also giving ourselves a bit of compassion. And
yes,
so giving compassion is really, treating yourself as you would your good friend. And maybe if you watch your tone of voice, your words to yourself, and we can be really critical towards ourselves. So just trying to speak to ourselves in the same way as we speak to people that we love. Or Karen Neffen talks about, who studies self-compassion. She talks about this touch, hugging yourself, giving yourself comfort, basically, in the times when we're not feeling that great.
Self-soothing behavior, sometimes it's described as, yes, how do we soothe ourselves? And sometimes as adults, we need to soothe ourselves, which I think whether we're near to home or far from home, having a few ideas or kind of giving oneself a metaphorical or even a physical hug, there's plenty of different ideas and thoughts about how to look after oneself as an adult, as you would tend to if you're a parent, father or mother or whatever, caring for a child, that you would give them a hug. So, and very much support that idea of self-compassion and how people, listening in and being part of this webinar, and who will watch it back, are able to kind of engage in that and think about how to improve that, maybe, because that will allow us to manage our mental health in a little bit of a different way and a helpful way, I would suggest. Yeah, great.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
And I just want to add one point.
Please, yes.
Emilia had said. As for our people, the main difficulty now, if we are trying to help them to find some positive things and to value them, the main problem with Ukrainians now to help them to allow for themselves to see positive things, because they can face with plenty of positive things in their life in Ireland, for example, now. But there is a huge feeling of guilt. How can I be happy? How can I appreciate some things now? So the first very important work is like working with the feeling of guilt, actually, before they can start to appreciate, because usually they have these, like fluctuations when they can see something positive and good in their life, and then they feel anger to themselves, because how can I be happy if my loved one still in Ukraine without electricity in the cold apartment, and how I can think about positive things. So it's like very important part to validating that these feelings are normal as well.
And maybe managing our mental health involves asking for what we need sometimes, if not demanding, but certainly asking for what we need. And perhaps there's a bit of a deficit there for people from migrant communities or ethnic minorities, whether they're refugees, displaced, whatever their status is. But the idea of, I have to be grateful what I have because it's much better than life would be in sub-Saharan Africa or, whatever, or Ukraine or wherever people are migrating to Ireland from. So it kind of creates this kind of, going back to some of your thinking, maybe, Emilia, the socio-structural aspects, the social and societal aspects of, I can't ask for what I want because I have to be grateful for what I have. So it's this kind of thinking that can be, that could be explored a little bit more and encouraged for people to speak out and speak up maybe about what their needs are. Go on, Emilia.
Yeah, that's that may be true, but our organization works from the model of or approach that also encompasses human rights, and our health and mental health is our human right, and we have the right to the same to attain services that would ensure that we have similar health outcomes to other people living in this country. And I'm thinking now, about ideas that are maybe in the Wellness Recovery Action Plan as well. That idea of self, like you said, self-advocating for ourselves, for what we need. That idea of, educating ourselves, about our feelings, and maybe about our condition as well. And having also that wellness toolbox or an action plan. And I think that's really important, that we understand what how we feel, what makes us feel better, what we have to do to maintain our wellness, what helps us to cope, lift our mood, but also who are there to support us as a person, a doctor, an organization. And, as this webinar is slowly coming to an end, maybe, we should encourage people to just think about, these things that we can do ourselves, that work for us, who is there for us that we can call, and is there an organization that we can call? If we don't speak English, what's our alternative? And start thinking about these supports, because when we talk about resilience, it's not something that happens in us, it's something that happens between us as well.
Yes.
So let's think about this in a broader sense.
Great, Emilia. And again, very much back to the message of empowering people and encouraging people forward to articulate their voice or bear witness to their story, which I suppose is the essence, coming back to some of my own training as a psychotherapist, to bear witness and put words on one's own story, and that's a very open invitation that we have here at Aware. I was thinking, what was I thinking of? The idea of, some of the other people in the space, I was thinking of when you were speaking about human rights, the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, and then you have different kind of organizations in your space as well too, Emilia, don't you? The Migrant Rights Centre, the Irish Refugee Council. So there's a variety of other services there and support structures maybe with different remits or have different kind of missions. And yet there are spaces out there, including your own, of course, at Cairde, that are there to provide support and guidance and information, as you've said, to people who are, migrants to Ireland or refugees here in Ireland. Yes.
That's right. Yes. Thanks, Stephen, for raising this. And I think you, Katarina, mentioned that as well. When we speak about mental health, it's really what works for our communities, for the migrant communities, is this holistic idea of mental health that doesn't stop at, strictly speaking, mental health and mental health services, but looks at the mental, physical, social, and spiritual well-being. So we have on our website, we have a multilingual guide to mental health that includes a directory, and we also have and that directory includes all these organizations that you mentioned, from Cairde, Migrants' Rights Centre, Immigrant Council of Ireland, Irish Refugee Council. There are organizations that look specifically at migrants issues, but they're community organizations, community groups that play huge importance in terms of, elevating sense of isolation, religious groups, and church is very important, I think, for the Ukrainian community, isn't it, Katarina? And of course, the formal supports too. I also would encourage you to visit our Health Connect website. It's an introduction to health services in Ireland, including entitlements, and there are maps also to help you to access services. So perhaps people can explore this. And
great, And what's that website, Emilia?
It's called Health Connect.
Healthconnect.ie.
.ie, yes.
.ie, great. Thank you, Emilia. That's great. There's just one question coming through. There's a couple coming through, but just want to answer to, you know, from a member of the audience wondering about a list of agencies or contact details, you know, that based in Kerry for a person working with Ukrainian refugees. So is there anyone that has a kind of knowledge of that here, Emilia or Katarina, or maybe we can think about it post the webinar? Okay.
Yeah, maybe we can explore that. Yeah, specifically from on the top of my head, I can't help either.
Okay, no problem. That's fine. That's fine. And just to say, you know, that we're going to post the links after the webinar to the audience, people who have registered, you know, for attendance here about what, that website that Emilia has recommended and pointed the participants to. Katarina, I suppose we're coming towards the end, and I suppose just to offer, you know, the time for some concluding remarks that you might have, you know, in support of people who are part of this webinar this afternoon, you know, around managing or minding one's mental health.
It's not quite easy situation for me, because now I'm thinking what to tell in brief of all this kind of material that I had planned, actually.
Okay.
So maybe you can ask me some questions for this, because of course I can speak, but I will speak for 1 hour. I need maybe your help and assistance to make it
if I was to
briefly.
ask you a specific question, would you like to say a little bit more about the safety, those aspects of safety that you spoke to earlier? I think that might be helpful.
Yeah, sure. I will speak in brief, so I won't go deep in that.
Yes.
But I will talk about, actually, it's about biases and about this picture which you have in your mind when you start working with refugees. And mainly this rule sounds like consider something. First rule is consider differences, because if you're facing with a group of migrants or refugees, there's not like one common group when everybody is like feel exactly the same experience. For example, if you're facing with refugees, you have in mind a picture that these are people who lost everything and their life had changed like in a very bad way, and they are poor, they have nothing to do. But same time, for example, you can face for the people who were rich, for example, they have their income, and their life had changed for in some good ways, for example, but still there are people who need help and support. And for example, if you will support these people in that way that, oh, you poor refugee and you maybe need everything, it won't be helpful. These people will have a huge and profound guilt, because how people can support them if they have something good issues. And there are multiple different differences, because all these refugees and migrants, they're not like one group. Each person has its own experience. And the first main important issue for yourself, not to put this bacteria, as I said, like surgeon.
Yes.
Before you start to help people, try to be interested in a personal experience of a person. What exactly situation does this person has? First, ask this person about, and then start to help, because it can be like you're not helping, you just putting your own projections for that person, and it doesn't work very well.
Yes.
And my second safety rule, mind as a supporter, mind your own dark side, what I mean. For example, if you are a migrant and living here for 10, 15 years, and you build for yourself like long way to get in this forced stamp and to adaptate, and here you come in people, refugees who have this right to work from the first days and to get some services. What about your own envy part, for example? What about your own anger part when you think that maybe these people have some preferences? And it's important, you know, to keep these dialectics, that from some part you feel compassion, you want to help people, and from one part you can feel this kind of emotions. And it's very important to be aware and to be conscious about these parts which you can feel like a helper, and then to unite them. Because it doesn't matter what experience people have, all of people still need support. Doesn't matter how rich or poor they are, what resources they have or what they don't might have, still they have grief. But they can be different patterns of this grief. Still.
Yes, that's very helpful. That's very helpful. Yeah. Thank you, Katarina, for those main points, in relation to that about encouraging people, but also kind of highlighting what some of the issues very much are, and for people to develop their awareness and understanding, as part of this audience this afternoon about, the thoughts, comments, observations, tips, ideas that you both gave. So I just really want to, in sum, to thank you both very much, Emilia and Katarina, for participating and offering your time for this webinar around minding and looking after our mental health when we're far from home, and thinking about the displaced Ukrainian community, refugees from all parts of the world who are residing in Ireland. And, you've been very powerful, and as I said earlier, passionate about delivering those messages in this conversation this afternoon. So just to thank you both for that, and to thank the attendees for coming along, and to say that our next webinar is going to take place, and for people to register at aware.ie. It's going to take place in January, and if the dates are right, Wednesday the 11th of January 2023 at 12 noon. And the title of it is Exploring Eating Disorders and Mental Health. So please visit our website for further information about the wide range of support services and educational programs and information that is available there. And you can register for our webinar mailing list on our website, and you'll receive a follow-up email should you so wish, if you'd like to keep up to date on upcoming webinars. The follow-up email is also going to allow you to watch this webinar back, or to promote it among your friends and networks if you so wish, and it's also going to be available on our YouTube channel. And lastly, for the participants this afternoon, you'll be invited when the webinar ends to give your feedback on today's webinar, and we'd be very grateful, for our further development and learning about this webinar series, if you could take a minute to complete that. And also just to say, for any person in the audience who's been impacted or triggered or activated psychologically by the content and the material we've discussed this afternoon, please reach out to an organization like Emilia's at Cairde for support or information, or like our own organization, Aware. We have a wide range of supports for people from the Ukrainian community, refugee community, and also people from different nationalities, and failing that, there's also to encourage people to go to a health professional, and perhaps a GP that you're linked in with if you've been activated by the material that we've discussed this afternoon. So again, just to reiterate my thanks to both the panelists and the contributors today, Emilia and Katarina, and to wish you very well for the rest of the year ahead, and to take care. So thank you.
Thank you.